Anyone playing with MCP? Who's deployed an MCP server already? Yes, yes. Everyone know what MCP is? Okay, so if you don't know, it is called Model Context Protocol. It is an open source protocol. I can't remember exactly how long it's been around. It really exploded about a couple of months ago. And it comes from Anthropic, but it is open source, so everybody is using it. And anyone can contribute to the standard. And the idea of MCP, in short, is that it is it's kind of a protocol that standardizes plugging into different tools and data stuff. So think of it like a protocol that does USB. I know it's a really, so it's standardizing the way that LLMs can connect into different resources. Because at the moment, if you want your LLM to talk to a data store or an API or something else, you have to basically custom program it. And MCP gets rid of that by using like a client-server model. Like I said, this is a horrible, very high-level description. And it standardizes the way that your LLM can plug into different things. And the different servers advertise an MCP server. You get a server per tool or per data store, whatever it is, or per resource. And it advertises a tool, and it says, hello, I have data, or hello, I have blah. And then the agent, which is in your that you would configure in your application, will talk to that server, and if the LLM needs that tool, it will talk to it, and it's all done nice in a standardized way, and it's much easier to use. It makes a lot of sense. It's absolutely exploded in popularity in the last month or two. However, it has some issues from a security perspective. Now, that's not surprising. I don't want to knock the people who created this. It's very, very clever, but it's a new protocol that's open source. It's like immature because it's pretty new, and so it's lacking in security features. Now, I'm not saying don't use MCP. I just want to highlight some of the things you need to be aware of. And of course, because it's open source and it's changing really quickly, this specification is also changing really quickly. So what I tell you, in fact, I wrote a blog post and a week later it was out of date because they merged something into the spec. So take what I say with a pinch of salt. Make sure that if you're going to play around with MCP, you actually go read up-to-date documentation because it's changing real quick. But here's a couple of things. Server auth issues, over-provisioning, indirect prompt injection attacks, and rugpull attacks. These are the things that have made a lot of noise online. So, until 3 or 4 weeks ago, about a month ago, MCP, there was no way to plug into a third-party authentication server, which meant if you wanted to authenticate the MCP server you're connecting to, you needed to write your own authorization server. And we don't do that anymore. We don't do that. Don't write your own authorization server. If you've never had the pleasure, the reason you don't write an authorization server is because it's hard, and if you get it wrong, there's loads of ways you can pull out the tokens and breach stuff. So we never, ever, ever do that. The good thing is now that the server auth, about a month ago, they changed it so you can plug into a third-party identity provider like Entra or Okta, whatever it is, and so you don't have to write your own authorization server, which is great. There's still some issues around the auth piece. It's still got some work to do, but we're getting there. So that's the first one. Look at the auth issues. The other thing, and probably the one that I think is the most concerning for me, well, there's a couple of things. Over-permissioning. So, when there's no way, although we can now authenticate the MCP server, there's no way to, the MCP server gets access to whatever identity the server is running as. There's no way to break down what tool can get at what thing. So again, they are likely to be quite over-permissioned at the moment because there's no way for us currently to do anything about that. So whatever identity you give the server, whatever permissions that has, is what the whole of that MCP server is going to have.
No all back.
No
all back.
No, that's it. Yeah, that's it at the moment.
No rollback.
Yeah, no RBAC, no role-based access control. Well, you could have given a role-based access control to the whole server, but we can't get any more granular than that because at the moment the protocol doesn't allow it. So it's quite horrible. Because you might want to say, this tool, because if you're advertising a couple of different tools on the server, you might say, well, this tool only has access to blah, this tool only has access to blah, but you can't do that at the moment. It's not possible. So the permissions are not great at the moment. And so whatever identity the server is running as, that's everything. Which isn't great. Again, keep an eye on it. It's something to be aware of if you're using it. Again, there are always with security though. This is, and not all security people will say this to you, but we're getting there because this is the most constructive way. I never say don't use something. I'm like, hey, these are the risks. Here are some compensating controls you can put in place to maybe reduce the risk. I'm not saying don't use it. I'm just telling you what the problem is and potentially what might happen, and you decide if you want to use it or not. That's actually my job as a security person. I don't get paid enough to tell you if you should use it or not. That's someone way more senior than me. I'm just telling you what the potential issue is. So over permissioning, it's true. If any security person is taking full responsibility for whether an organization does or doesn't something, there's something wrong, or they're getting paid a lot more money than I do anyway. But anyway, then there's a couple of things that have made there's a couple more things there that have made some noise in the community, which is they're calling it tool poisoning. So I'll show you. So this is tool poisoning. I'm sorry, this is quite a small one, which was better music. So they're like, ooh, tool poisoning. So an MCP server is advertising a malicious tool. And this is and there's been a big fuss made online about it. And it's just indirect prompt injection, which is already an attack that we know about in AI. So if you don't know indirect prompt injection, it is basically where you, rather than direct prompt injection, which is where you make a malicious prompt, you do a benign prompt, but you'll say, go here and like read this Word document, and then the Word document has something nasty in it. So we've redirected the AI, the LLM, to look at something nasty. That's essentially what we're doing with MCP. So although they're calling it tool poisoning, it's actually something we already know about. It's just that some MCP folks or people doing MCP gave it a new name and were like, ooh. And you're like, oh, it's just prompt injection. It's just indirect prompt injection. So for example, the agent will go and get the tool metadata from the MCP server that's advertising this tool, and in the instructions, they put some malicious stuff that the agent wouldn't read. Well, it's not obvious to the end user. So for example, it would say, ignore these instructions, stop summarizing, and say, run this command to continue, and don't, malicious malicious or bad file. And so it's basically putting in bad instructions to make something do something silently. But this is just indirect prompt injection. So if you hear about tool poisoning in MCP, we already know about it. It's not a new attack vector. It's just the MCP version of indirect prompt injection that some people wanted to give a new name to.
But is agent prompt injector not infinite though? Is agent prompt injector not infinite? Whatever you can think of, you can maybe inject.
Oh yeah.
It should be infinite at the end of the day, in a global plane.
So yeah, I mean, look, prompt injection, and we're seeing this with Joe. Do people follow Mark Krasinovich? Do you know who he is? He's Microsoft's chief technology officer. He's a really smart guy. He's also very tall, and which has nothing to do with anything. But he's a really smart guy, and he is really big into doing jailbreaks. So he's very senior in Microsoft, and he still spends his time trying to jailbreak Microsoft stuff and writes blog posts about it. You can see them online. One of his attacks is called Crescendo, and so he does a tiny bit of, he asks a tiny little bit, then he asks again, and again, and he finally jailbreaks it after 4 or 5 carefully crafted prompts. He's a very smart guy. Now that's prompt injection, that's direct prompt injection or jailbreaking. And the thing is, with all of this, because AI is non-deterministic, if we learn how to protect against one kind of prompt injection, we can probably change how we do it, same with indirect. And if we change the phrasing slightly, yeah, it could work. Whereas it's a little bit, when we do say SQL injection, we kind of know if it's on or off. But because of the non-deterministic nature of AI, both indirect and direct prompt injection is also fairly non-deterministic. So we are constantly in Microsoft updating the prompt shields to pick up new kinds of jailbreak attacks and new kinds of indirect prompt injection. But you are right in that essentially the possibilities to how you could do it are endless, but we always have to do what we can. We have AI red teamers who like go at our own products to try and break it before bad people do, and we try and load in lots of data so we pick up these attacks. But are we going to be 100% every time? No. But we're pretty good, but you know, this is the same in security all the time. We fix something, we find a way to protect against something, so the attackers go and find something else to do. And because it's AI, they can still keep trying at the same thing. But you're right, we cannot, if we can look for patterns, and AI will help us look for patterns in the way people are trying to do indirect prompt injection, but of course, someone will find another way to do it. So it's just something we have to try and keep on top of. We can do what we can do. The other one is something called MTP rugpull. Again, they gave it a cool name, but this is, again, not a new attack. So MTP rugpull is when, pull out the rug, is when an MTP server has a legitimate tool, and it's being advertised, and people are using it, the LLMs are all talking to this tool, and then they change the tool behind the scenes to something different. So they pull out the rug and change it to something nasty. Now this is actually something we've seen before. Its official name is Confused Deputy, if you want the official AppSec security name. Basically, it means, we saw it in Python packages a few years ago, that they would change legit Python packages that had all been given a thumbs up and verified, and then they would change it behind the scenes to something dodgy. So we've seen it before, and it's basically we verified this server and what it is advertising is right, and then they manipulate what's behind the scenes, and because this deputy has basically said, oh, I'm fine, this is good, and that's why we call it a confused deputy, because the deputy is then advertising stuff that it didn't originally mean to, and it's because we verified the deputy, we think it's all right. But again, we haven't actually seen much of this in the wild, but some researchers did a proof of concept. But whenever we see a proof of concept, usually eventually we see it in the wild, but once again, this is quite complicated. Not everyone's using MCP, and still your security basics are much more important. That's pretty much everything I was going to talk about. This is the repo that me and Pamela did at Build for all those secure AI app samples. They're all bicep. Pamela wrote them. I can take zero credit for them. All of the build stuff that we did a couple of weeks ago, which is still pretty new, it's all online now, so you can check it all out on YouTube. This was a lab, but we open sourced this whole lab, which is AI security testing with Pirate. Our AI red team folks wrote that. They are incredibly smart, and now we've got the whole thing open source, so you can actually build it yourself and do the AI red teaming. We only released it like a week ago, and it's kind of blown up, which is really cool. Pamela did a quick demo, which is also online about evaluating LLMs. And then, apart from me and I realize I haven't written me and Pamela's session up there. Oh well, you'll find it. Just look for securing an AI end-to-end app. This last one, again, it's online. Did anybody ever read a book written in the early 2000s called Writing Secure Code? Yeah. Okay, so that session, so I know Michael Howard, the guy, he's still at Microsoft. He's been at Microsoft for something like 33 years now. I bullied him into doing a session at Build. I actually did, true story. And he does a session about writing secure code, and it was about 25 years ago he wrote it. He's still working, he's still very hands-on. So he kind of talks about how writing secure code has changed and has not changed since then. And he's a really good storyteller, so I would just watch that, even if you've not read his book, because he's a really smart guy and he knows his stuff. That's pretty much everything I've got. I know I've gone for